Hungarian Folk Tales. Martin and the Cursed Princess. Once upon a time, there was a poor man who had 3 sons. The youngest son's name was Martin. When the boys grew up, their father turned to them and said, "Well, boys, you've had enough to eat at home, and now you're old enough and strong enough to work. 1 year from now, I want you each to return home with a suit of clothes. Off you go, and may God bless you all." The boys did as they were told, and they started their journey. After a while, they reached a huge old tree. At this point, the road forked into 3 directions. The boys said goodbye to each other, and each of them started walking down a different path. As Martin walked along, he reached a forest. A huge, warty frog was approaching him and spoke to Martin. "I know you're looking for a job. Come on, work for me, and you won't be sorry. All you have to do is chop and saw some wood. Plus put me to bed in the evenings and raise me out of bed in the mornings. Well, what do you say? I'm your man. Wherever I have to work, it's all the same." So he shook the frog's hand and stayed. A whole year passed by. The frog was not a bad employer at all. On the last day it said, "Well, Martin, you've done a good job. Your brothers are taking their new clothes home. But never mind, just go into the pantry and pick whatever you like." Martin selected a nice suit of clothes and started on his return journey homewards. At the old tree, he met his brothers again. "Well, who employed you, Martin?" But as soon as Martin told that he was employed by a frog, the boys nearly fell over laughing. But when they saw his new suit of clothes, they all stopped laughing. They grew yellow with envy. After they got home, they stayed home for a while, but when spring came, their father once again spoke to them. "Well, boys, it's time for you to be working again. But this time tell your masters to pay you with wine." The boys did as they were told. When they got to the tree, they said goodbye again, and each went on his way. The frog was already there in the forest. "Come and work for me, Martin. Your job will be as easy as it was the last time." Martin was already used to the frog, and he didn't mind working at all. When the new year was up, the frog told him, "Hey, Martin, your brothers are already busy carrying their wine home. Never mind anything. Go, find a bottle and walk down into the cellar. Fill it up with the wine you like the best." So the year went by and the boys met once again at the crossroads. Both brothers were rolling a sizable barrel as they went. When they spotted Martin, they couldn't help laughing at him. "Well, that frog master of yours is not a generous employer. All he ever gave you was this miserable little bottle." Martin didn't say anything. He rolled out the largest barrel and poured the wine into it. "Maybe a smaller barrel will be more appropriate," they mocked at him. But it didn't last for long, because when they saw that the bottle was simply not running out of wine, they were so astonished that their eyes bulged out. Their amazement grew when they tasted it. They rested at home for a while, but then their father sent them off to work again. "Now you have clothes and you have wine of your own, and you are ready to get married. But you have to find a wife." The boys did like before, and when they got to the fork in the road, they said goodbye to each other once again. Martin went to see his frog, and the 2 elder brothers went their own way, whatever it was. The frog told Martin, "Well, Martin, this time it's not going to be as easy as before. This time you will have to chop and stack up 3 times as much wood as last year." When the year was over, the frog told Martin, "You've done a good job again, but now you have to be very careful. Gather up my bed linen and take it to the top of that wood stack. Then carry me up and place me on the top of the stack." Martin did as he was told and finally placed the frog on top of the pile of wood. Then he heard the frog call down from the top of the wood, "All right, now go, find a broom, then set the wood stack on fire, and as soon as the wood catches fire, you will see frogs leaping towards the fire from all sides. You must sweep all of them up into the fire, but beware, don't let any of them get away, because that would mean great trouble." Martin begged the frog to come down from the top of the pile, but the frog didn't listen. In the end, he had no choice. He had to set fire to the stack of wood. There was a lot of panic and commotion. There were so many frogs, Martin could hardly sweep them all onto the fire. By nightfall, the fire burned down. The frogs were all lost, including Martin's frog master. Martin was very, very sad. He was still full of sorrow when he fell asleep. The next morning, when he opened his eyes, he saw a beautiful maiden standing next to his bed. "Martin, thank you for saving me. I had to live as a frog with all my household until an honest lad came along and did everything as I told him. But now you have removed the curse." Martin's heart beat loudly when he saw her. The princess jumped into his arms and said, "Your brothers are going home with their wives, but don't you worry. Go down to the courtyard and bring the horses to the best carriage. By the time they get home, we'll be there before them." And so it happened. There was great astonishment and a lot of envy. But Martin was a good brother. He gave each of his brothers 3 sacks full of gold. Then he married the princess and went off to rule as a king. Maybe he could have found himself a better job, but he had no reason to complain, did he now? Hungarian Folk Tales. Fisherman John. By the banks of a mighty river stood a fisherman's hut, and in that hut a fisherman lived together with his wife, but alas, they had no children. One moonlit night, the old man went down to the river and he cast his net. Suddenly he saw something approaching on the waters, and it shined like a star. He watched as it neared him. And what did it turn out to be? A small coffin. And in the coffin lay an infant child, fast asleep. He lifted the coffin from the waters, placed it in his boat, and took it home to his wife. "Look what I caught in the river." And lo, he showed her the beautiful golden-haired child. "We have no children of our own," he said. "We are old. We will raise him, and then we will have someone to care for us." The old woman agreed. Time passed and the child began to go to school. The school teacher had a scrawny little horse. He said to John, for that was the boy's name, "Little John, tell your father he could buy this horse." So John ran home full of excitement and told his father. "Father, my school teacher has a horse for sale. Let's buy it." "We don't need a horse, son. We have neither hay nor oats. How would we feed it?" The boy said, "It could graze in the woods by the banks of the river." So they bought the scrawny horse, and the horse grazed in the woods by the banks of the river. One day, the horse spoke. "Listen, John, at the edge of the village there is a small house. In it, a worn saddle. Ask the owner to sell it. If he won't sell it, steal it." The owner gave John the saddle, for he had no need of it. And little John took it home and put it on the horse's back. Then the horse said, "Go, John, to the edge of the village. There is an old bridle bit. Buy it, and if the owner will not sell it, steal it." But the owner would not sell the bit. So John stole it. Again the horse spoke. "John, go to the village. There is an officer there who has a rusty sword, and if he will not give it to you, steal it." The soldier gave John the sword and told him, "Polish it until it shines. Be a soldier." John returned home, and again the horse spoke. "Master Fisherman John, tell your father to buy you new clothes." The old man said, "Son, I cannot buy you new clothes, for I have no money." But John insisted and told his father that he would pay for the clothes. So his father agreed and bought him new clothes. Again the horse spoke. "My dear John, polish the harness, the bit and the sword, then clean the saddle and put it on my back." He continued, "My dear Master John, you have a younger sister whom we shall bring back." John, however, insisted that he had no sister. The horse said, "Yes, you do, at the edge of the neighbouring country. She is locked away and only rarely sees the sunlight. Climb on my back and we shall set off." They went to the edge of the neighbouring country and found the house where the girl was locked away. There the horse spoke. "John, kick the door 3 times. If it doesn't open, strike it with your sword 3 times. If it still doesn't open, look around to see if you can see anything. And if you do see something, jump on my back." "I see an old woman," said John. At that, the horse took off at a gallop, racing along as fast as thought. When they reached the banks of the river, the old woman appeared behind them on a long stick carrying a broom in her hand. And when the horse jumped to the far bank of the river, the old woman struck the surface of the water with such force that the waters parted. She cried out, "Lucky for you that you got away!" Then the old woman went back. The horse said to John, "My dear Master Fisherman John, we will set off again tomorrow, but you must be very careful." The next day they set off again for the house at the edge of the neighbouring country. John kicked the door, then struck it so hard with the sword that it burst open. He grabbed the girl's arm, but he tore her blouse and was unable to pull her out. Again the old woman appeared on the stick with the broom in her hand. John said to his horse, "The old woman is coming!" And the horse raced homeward as fast as the winds of a storm. When he reached the river, he jumped to the far bank. The old woman lashed out at him with the broom and struck the horse's rump, but the horse was still able to leap to the far bank. The old woman cried out, "If you ever return, I will have all of your teeth." The next day the horse said to John, "Fisherman John, we won't go today, but tomorrow we shall. Today we must rest." Then he said, "Dear master, there is a tree in your father's garden with 3 apples on it. Pick them, put them in your pocket, and when we arrive at the house at the edge of the neighbouring country, throw 1 of them at the top of the door, 1 at the bottom of the door, and 1 at the middle of the door, but throw them so hard that you break the door down." So John did as he was told, and when they arrived at the house, he threw the apples at the top, the bottom, and the middle of the door, and the door broke down. The girl, Helen, stood in the doorway. John led her outside, and when they had left the house, John looked to see if he could see the old woman, and indeed, there she sat on her stick with her broom in her hand. John said to his horse, "Oh, the old woman is coming, on a stick, carrying a broom in her hand." So John and Helen quickly mounted the horse, and the old woman chased them. "Fisherman John, look behind us, because I feel that my rump is on fire." Johnny looked back and saw a cloud of dust far behind them. The horse flew onward. And when they reached the bank of the river, the old woman was still behind them, accompanied by 27 magic stallions. John's horse jumped to the far bank. The old woman and the 27 stallions tried to jump the river too, but they fell into its waters and drowned. And today they still lie somewhere beneath the waters of the river, if no one has fished them out. And so John rescued his sister Helen from captivity, and they both lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. Bees on the Train. Once upon a time, there was a large farm, and on that farm lived a man who had relatives from another village who came to visit him one day. They did not want to arrive empty-handed, so they brought him a gift of honey. The honey was quickly eaten with big chunks of fresh bread and was soon all gone. But while they sat eating, they discussed what a fine thing it was to keep bees and how simple it was with such rich rewards. The man could hardly wait for the next farm gathering, where he suggested they should buy bees to make honey. The head farmer agreed and asked if there was anyone willing to work with bees. A man stood up and said he knew all there was to know about bees. He also told them that he knew where to buy bees if that was what they wanted, and everyone cheered with joy. They worked out how much money to give the man, and he set off to buy bees for the farm. He bought as many hives as he could put on a train. Then he had the whole car covered in red cloth and had red clothes and a red hat made to wear. He soon made friends with the bees and spoke to them. He opened the door, and the bees came and went as they pleased. When they were halfway back to the farm, the train drove into a sidetrack, and the engine left. So the man asked the station master, "Why has the engine gone?" "Because," the station master said, "it was ordered to leave." "How long will the train be in the station?" "Who am I to know that?" "Don't talk to me like that, kind sir, because if I know that the train will be staying here for a whole day long, then I will let my bees out so they can have some air and food." "The train will remain for at least 3 days more," the station master told him. The beekeeper went out and opened up the hives. Come out, children, and have some air. Find food for yourselves and return to your hives in time for the sunset." The bees had barely left when suddenly the station master had an order to start the train again. The beekeeper saw from the top of the carriage that the engine was coming and the train was hooked up, and they sat waiting for the station master's signal to start. The beekeeper ran to complain. "What is all of this? You never told me about this, station master, but I received an order to start the train." "But that's impossible. My bees are still in the field. They cost a fortune." "What am I to do with your bees?" the station master replied. "I am a station master and not a beekeeper." "Well, at least leave the carriage with the bees here in the station so it can be coupled up with another train tomorrow." "That's impossible." And with these words, he started the train, which left the station with the bees' carriage. The beekeeper also left in his red clothes. While most of the bees were busy gathering honey, they sent a small party back to see if all was safe with their carriage in the station. Well, when they arrived, they saw that the train had taken their hives away. They returned to the meadow and told the others that their carriage had vanished. So all of the bees flew back to the station, and when they arrived, they found people waiting for a passenger train. Well, The bees thought that these people had stolen their hives, and so they stung them and stung them. The people cried out for help. The station master heard their calls, so he rushed out of his office, and he too was attacked by the angry swarm. His wife heard his cries and opened the window to see what was wrong. And as she opened the window, the bees rushed in and stung her so badly that she cried louder than all the rest. The station master heard this, and he ran upstairs to find out what had happened to his wife. And then he saw that the whole room was filled with bees. The two of them had to hide under a blanket to save their skins, but both were badly stung and their faces sadly swollen. The people waiting for the train all ran back to their homes, but the swarm of bees flew after them. The other villagers heard their shouts and ran out into the street. "Help! The village is being attacked by bees!" And they rang the big bell. The station master eventually came to his senses, and he called for the train to be sent back to the station, and it soon reappeared on the platform. The beekeeper, still dressed all in red, climbed on top of the carriage and started to call the bees back. "Come on, children, your hives are here." The bees, hearing their master's voice, gathered together and flew back in an orderly fashion. Those that had survived the bloody battle made their way quietly back into their hives. Then the beekeeper went to see the station master, but he could hardly recognize him. "You deserved whatever happened because you spoke to me so rudely." But the beekeeper eventually forgave the station master, and the beekeeper went back to the farm and laughed when he recalled what had happened that day. The bees soon started to make honey on the farm and made more money than all the farmers and animals put together. From then on, life on the farm was sweet.